I'm Roger Benedict, Principal Viola of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and in this masterclass I'll be exploring one of the excerpts that has to be prepared for the YouTube Symphony Orchestra audition. It's from Don Juan by Richard Strauss. This piece is incredibly virtuosic, and that's the reason it's always set for orchestral auditions. Make sure you do plenty of research, listen to several recordings, and if possible get a copy of the full score to see how the viola part fits into the whole. It's this vital sense of context that you have to convey in an audition. So even though you're playing on your own, the listener should sense from your playing that you understand exactly what your instrument's role is in the excerpt. I think a good tempo for this excerpt would be about minim or half note equals 84. But remember, it's better to play a little bit under the tempo, but under control, than at top speed and out of control. I'll go through the piece in sections. So the first thing is to make sure it's incredibly rhythmic, that there's a big difference between semiquavers, triplets, the dotted rhythm in the second bar. Of course, the ironic thing is, when you play this piece in the orchestra, the first bar is a bit like this, because there's no time to play the notes. Often the conductor's still walking on stage when he starts the piece. But for the audition, all the notes have to be there. So make sure every note is as clear as a bell, every single semiquaver. It's got lots of clarity. For the run at the end of the first line, I think it helps if you practice it building up backwards. So, the idea is then, if you're working always on the arrival note, then you'll always get there. But if you're always starting from the beginning, you don't always know where you're arriving. So to practice them by building up is a good idea. The next passage in triplets helps if you hold your left-hand fingers down wherever possible. So I've got my first finger already on this fifth. Then practice it in small bursts. Until it's really clear. The next note should really be a long crotchet, and then a quaver with an accent before you launch into this accompaniment of this fantastic tune that happens throughout the orchestra. And make sure your pizzicatos are really resonant, each one of them. They should sound incredibly big. There's a detail at the end of the third line of the excerpt that I think is worth bearing in mind. The last note of the penultimate bar is fortissimo, and then so on to the next passage. And listen to those accents. Again, they sometimes get forgotten about. So if you can really show those as much as possible, that would be great. Another thing that gets forgotten, I find, at letter B, a lot of people play this. In fact, it's the opposite. The second beat of B is a drop in dynamic. It goes from a fortissimo to only forte or even less. So make sure you hit the second beat of B. It's less. At the end of the line, this is pianissimo and very shy. Yes, you can underplay this. Then after this, suddenly it's... And you can take a little bit of time over this passage, more expressive. He actually writes to be a bit slower. And it's injecting these little passages with some charm, which will really make you shine in the audition. Like this. Okay, on to the next passage, letter C. So this passage, which is so difficult to control, I'd recommend, first of all, you don't need to play the bottom note. It doesn't make it particularly easier, and I think the focus should be on getting that piano triplet really together, or really rhythmic, rather. Yeah. Watch the intonation at the end. It's easy to get sharp, as I just did, so be just very careful there. And then the last passage. That's where you breathe the sigh of relief that you've got to the end. Just make sure that this is incredibly rhythmic. And not just rhythmic, but there's character in the rhythm. Getting to this tremolo. So, that covers Don Juan. Good luck. You have to practice a lot in this excerpt, but it's worth it. It really is. And if you're successful in your audition, then you'll end up principal viola of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra next March.